All right, everybody. I'm kind of running into an issue with audio and my screen recording. I'm not sure exactly what happened. Um, I'm attempting to do a voiceover. We will test this out and see if it works. If it does, great. Then thank you for tuning in. Thank you for hanging out with me. And we're going to do some edits. I'm sure that the video that you see right now is up and unfortunately with no audio. I'm not sure what happened. I don't know why it wasn't recorded. Anyway, we're going to choose a bird photo. I'm kind of excited about this. This is a red-capped cardinal. He's so gorgeous. He's been posing. All right, everybody. So I actually did do a test on the audio. I know you're going to hear it. It's going to sound a little weird that there's like inflections and then it goes weird for a moment where I'm talking about the recording again. But anyways, back to the red-capped cardinal. I like the way he's perched right here. I'm actually very excited that now my audio is working. Anyway, let's go ahead and choose a photo here. We're going to talk about a couple of brushes. So right now I'm just going to edit a couple of things. This is the photo that I'm going to choose for the red-capped cardinal. I really don't want to mess with the exposure too much because I don't want to take away from the photo or have them washed out either way. So I'm going to change a couple of things. I'm not going to really mess with the contrast. I'm going to put it back to normal because honestly, I like his vibrancy naturally. Oh, excuse me. Anyway, we're going to put that back to 0. And we're just doing a couple of light edits. Honestly, this photo is good as it is. I don't really need to do too much with this photo on the edits. Now, we're going to defringe. I haven't showed you how to do that here in Lightroom Classic, so we're going to play with that as well. Right now, I'm still doing a couple of adjustments. It's going to take a moment. So sometimes I play around with the whites to see, can I get more texture without having to do texture? If I do the darker I do something, the more it takes away from the photo or the more that it adds a bunch of shadow that I don't want. And sure, it might take away a bit of the noise, but I really don't care about that too much because I can fix the noise with details. So we're going to put that back at, yeah, -10 seems appropriate. So it's not too dark, not too bright. Texture, I'm probably going to put that at 10. Maybe 5? Did I leave it at 5? I left it at 5. So as I mentioned, there's not really too much to do because his feathers are already showing through. He's looking beautiful. It's 35 for me is the sweet spot to get rid of the noise. So you'll see how that's drastically reduced here. Everybody's different. I still like his feathers to look like feathers, so I didn't smooth it out completely. Now I want my photos to look flat, especially since this one was adding a little bit of roundness to it. Now we're going to defringe. And honestly, we don't really need to do it on this photo. We're going to come back to it. But now we're going to talk about his eyeball. If you look at his beak, we have a little part of it that's kind of like pointing out there, so we've got to fix that too. And oh, that was really bad to do with defringe, which is why you can sometimes do it if you have light bleed, sometimes not. There was a little bit of light bleed on his beak, but not enough for us to do it that drastically. So I tried to reduce it a bit. It didn't work, but I'm going to come back to the photo and actually fix that. Right now, to the human eye, you can't really see much of that because it's kind of blending in, which is fine. But I can still see it when I zoom in, so I'm going to fix that. It's just not going to happen immediately because we're going to jump to our brush tool. And so now we're going to go to our brush tool. And I kind of want to lighten his eyeball a bit and keep it a little bit sharp. So I don't want to change the exposure too much on his eyeball. Now this is perfect when you're using portraits. And so if you're wanting to edit anything with eyes in it and you want the eyes to look slightly lighter, I would recommend using this brush tool. And anything that you want to edit that you can edit before jumping into Photoshop, I suggest doing in Lightroom. Now sometimes it's kind of a little backwards. Just because you can doesn't mean you should sometimes in Lightroom. Like spot healing, for example. You don't want to do that in Lightroom. It comes out worse than it does in Photoshop. That's just me being 100% honest about it, not just from experience. I'm not the only user who has had that complaint about Lightroom. It works like a dream much more in Photoshop than it does in Lightroom, so I wouldn't recommend spot healing. There's a bunch of wonderful things you can do in Photoshop, including the patch tool. I love that thing. But right now we're going to focus on masking, which is what the brush does in Lightroom Classic. Now, there's a thing that you can do in Lightroom Creative Cloud that pretty much does the same thing. I guess we can do a demo of that another day. But right now, we're just going to sharpen the eyeball a little bit. Well, the iris, I should say. But we're going to slightly lighten it. So you see how it's just like a little hint lighter. You don't want to do anything too dramatic because then you're going to be like, oh my God, his eyeball is glowing. That's not normal. You want to keep it as natural as possible. And with a photo like this where you don't have to do too much edits, just pay attention to the little fine details and it'll be fine. It looks good. Yeah, see how sharp the eye is? So it looks like we're actually focused on his eyeball. Now I don't like that little extra perch that we got in the photo, but that's okay. That's easily fixable. So what I'm going to do is actually crop this in a perfect size that would be ideal for posting on Instagram, which is the 4x5, 8x10. And we're going to try to level it, but to be honest, we didn't actually have to do too much to it. So what I'm going to do is frame him. And what I'm doing right now is getting his head center, but I want his tail to the left. That did not come out right. But that's actually our leveling tool. You see where the ruler is? We can actually do that. We can also use our mouse to turn right and left. We don't really need to do that with this photo. So what I'm going to do is center him, which is I'm going to put his head at the top in center, but I want his tail, it's kind of like a diagonal, which is what I'm kind of showing you here. And that's kind of how I want him to be framed because that is a perfect profile for him. So now we're going to go to Edit in Photoshop. And we're going to work on that beak, although I'm probably going to come back here and remove everything on the edits and just not mess with defringe at all because it's kind of bothering me. I don't know why that progress bar still shows up. I really have no idea why it just doesn't disappear. It just stays like that. I think Adobe needs to fix that. I'm already in Photoshop, but I keep forgetting that it's like, I think it's still loading, but it's not loading. I was stuck like that for like 20 minutes last night, trying to figure out what was going on in Photoshop. So I've just learned to just click over it and it's fine. All right. I'm just scouting the area here to see if anything needs to be spot healed, if there's something on the perch that I don't want on there, but there's nothing there. So we're good. We're going to go ahead and take care of his beak. His eye's looking good. I still don't like that the defringe removed some of the background. And you see how it's kind of running onto his beak? And it's just a teensy bit of light bleed and ghosting. So we're going to fix that. And that means that this is not a proof I'm happy with. So we're going to go back. We're going to fix it. Just because I'm not happy with the way the defringe did that. So I'm not going to save it. And we're going to come back to Lightroom Classic. And we're going to undo all of the edits we did until we remove the defringe. Now we're going to go back to redoing our lens profile, but nothing with defringe. Sometimes it's good to go backwards. That way you're able to say, you know what, I tried it this way, I don't like it this way, I'm going to fix it this way. Because as I've always mentioned, you want to be proud of the work that you're posting. So sometimes you have to go back and forth. Essentially though, that's why I'm not deleting the photo or anything or the edits, because I am working in my raw file. So if I were to delete this, it would delete my entire raw file photo. It would be missing. So I don't want that to happen. So what I'm doing is I'm just going back and undoing the edits. Now we're going to sharpen his eyeball again. Well, his iris, I should say. And as you can tell, I was at the zoo taking this photo, so you can see the long lights at the top there and the little dot on his eye. That's still a reflection from the lights. I'm surprised you can't see me and his pupil, which is great. There was a series of my car in front of Animal's eyes, going to one of the local establishments here, the Wildlife Safari. So we're going to go back into Photoshop and we're going to remove that weird little twinge that came through from ghosting on his beak. After we crop everything and center it the way that I want. And like I said, minor adjustments. When you take a good photo and you have to do minor adjustments, you're doing very well. So, you know, congratulations if you didn't have to do too many edits. Yep, so now we're in Photoshop again, and we're going to fix that beak area that is driving me insane. And this time the defringe isn't happening, see? We don't have that weird grayness going on. So now we can fix it. Although I don't like the light bleed because it does kind of run onto the beak and blending in with the background. So we're just going to kind of make it look a little bit better. If you hear me snapping, it's the rats. They're kind of fighting with each other right now and making each other squeak. Girls, behave. They're so cute, though. They always look at me like, what did I do wrong? They give me innocent baby eyes. They're so cute. If they're good, they might get a little treat. Anyways, we're going to go back into Photoshop, and now we're exporting our photo because I'm happy with the end result of this photo. My girls are fighting still. I'm sorry. You hear me snapping again. I'm breaking up a little squeak fest. All right. So if you don't know, these are my 3 girls at the right there. I just posted a photo of them not too long ago, testing out a new filter, which I'm very happy with. And then there's the emu that I posted, as well as the cassowary. I guess that's how you say it. And this is the red-capped cardinal. All right, so we're going to work on another edit, and when it's appropriate to use spot healing. The reason why I wanted to show you the brush to begin with in Lightroom Classic is mainly for portraits. If you're working with eyes or something, if you need to lighten something or sharpen something, that's when it's ideal to use those tools. I mean, you could use them if you wanted to do something and do something dramatic, but honestly, I don't like to change natural looking photos too often. The only time I really enjoy doing a color splash is when it's, I want to say a floral photo. And that's mainly because flowers have a vibrancy of whatever color they are, and then the green. And I love the way that it just looks on a color splash to have a couple of different colors in there, or even just one color. But usually I like to capture it in different levels of the same. Now with this bird here, I found out from my friend that it is a golden Tavetta weaver. A beautiful little dude. He is just cute. Look at him. So when we're going to jump into Photoshop here very shortly, it is going to be to fix the little white spot on his beak there. You know, sometimes you take a photo of something and you're just like, oh, it would have been perfect if that one little thing wasn't on there. That's when spot healing is going to become ideal. So right now I'm just changing the settings. I kind of want him to be level. He's not completely level yet, but I do want to keep his profile because he had himself fluffed out, which was absolutely cute. I was stumped for days. I honestly thought he was a yellow, what was it, finch or a saffron finch. I was way wrong. I'm glad that my friend corrected me. I asked her, I was like, okay, it's eating at me. Let me just ask her because she works at the zoo and she's very knowledgeable on the birds. And I love being able to go to my friend and ask her, what is this? I know it sounds silly, but I love it. I do. And plus, I learned something new. You know, I do. I enjoy learning those things. Alrighty. So we're gonna play a couple of bit with the bird, and we want to still have his feathers come through. And we don't want to overdo it on the highlights either, because we want him to look natural, and we want to make sure that the lighting that shouldn't be there is removed, but we want the exposure to remain the same. So I'm playing around with a couple of things here just to see what works. I don't have to edit too much though. He is so cute. Sorry, I'm gushing over a bird, but I love birds. They're cute, especially when they do cute stuff like this, or even squirrels. I made a little, I believe I can fly meme with one of the squirrel photos that I took. I'm not joking. Oh, but yeah. Sorry, I was having a moment reminiscing over a squirrel that was standing up. I remember there was one photo I took of a squirrel where it looked like he was contemplating life on a bridge, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is too awesome. I like when I get to capture moments where they look like they're, living the way people live, except that they're very free in their element. So I enjoy moments like that when I take photos. So you're going to see some noise, but not too much of it. I mean, we've already pretty much removed most of the noise on the actual photo, but I don't want the colors to run on to each other where the feathers look like they're painted, and that's what we're getting right now. So I still want the feathers to look like feathers, and right now they kind of do. I also want to make the photo look flat. And I'm not changing anything with the colors because he also got a little bit of green right here, so I'm not going to defringe anything. But I am wanting the photo to look flat. I think we're good on this photo. I think this overall came out nice. So now we just need to remove that little dot on his beak. So we're going to go into Photoshop. Oh, he's so cute. I know, I'm still gushing over this bird. You should have heard the original audio when I was originally recording it. I was saying the same thing. All right, so now we're going to zoom into his cute little beak here, and we're going to remove that little dot that's on it. There we go. Now, the photo would have came out very different if I had used a CPL lens, but I didn't have access to that, and this was a Tamron lens that I was using. It was the Tamron 150-600 millimeter. It's a wonderful lens. It is a very, very wonderful lens. I mean, it did all of that. It got all of this without any glare. And some photos did have a little bit of glare, but I mean, it took some really stunning photos. So I think we just exported our birdie. I think. What am I? Oh, I know what I'm doing. I'm talking about not deleting your raw files. I'm like, wait, what am I doing in this video? So what I'm showing you here is that and I'm basically going to where I'm at in my original versus my collections. So if you make any edits and you delete them and thinking you're deleting the edits versus undoing, you're deleting that raw file. You do not want to do that, especially if you're backing up all of your photos. Me personally, the reason why I switched to Lightroom Classic was so that way I could run my photos on my external hard drive versus my Mac Mini, because the Mac Mini is limited on storage. And unfortunately, Creative Cloud doesn't work well with the original RAW files in Lightroom Creative Cloud versus Lightroom Classic. I can actually put my catalog on an external hard drive with Lightroom Classic. I cannot do that with Lightroom Creative Cloud. So I wanted to point that out. Don't delete your file because you're deleting the raw file. Just undo the edits. Your original raw file has not been tampered with. You're just making an edit. It's like a layer or a mask or whatever, and then you can export it in a JPEG. So that way you have that copy you just made versus deleting your raw file. Anyways, if you liked what you were watching, don't forget to like and subscribe and tune in for next week's video. And yes, the video is being re-uploaded, so that way it has audio this time around. But I wanted to thank you for hanging out with me and bearing with me through the audio issues while I figured out what was actually happening with my screen recording. And I did name it Y-Bird because I didn't know what the bird's name was at the time. But I wanted to thank my friend for correcting me on the bird. But anyways, thank you for tuning in. I hope to see you all next week. Hang out with me and watching another video here of doing some more editing. I probably will choose a flower or something else. We'll see what we do next week. But tune in next week. Thanks for hanging out. Have a wonderful evening.